Hi everyone, Caoimhin here from CIT's Blackrock Castle Observatory. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the night sky and how it will change over the course of Science Week from the 8th to the 15th of November. We are going to take a quick look at the planets and how they will change positions in the sky, but we'll save our close-ups for some deep sky objects that are appearing at this time of the year. A deep sky object is simply something that exists outside of our solar system that we can see through a telescope. They're in the deep sky rather than in the shallow sky within our own solar system. So here we go with some shallow sky objects. We've got Jupiter, Saturn and Mars all within our solar system. They're all going to be visible over the course of the evening for the entire month, and we'll see very quickly that between the 8th and the 15th they don't particularly change. By the 8th, we've already gotten to the last quarter of the moon, and it'll be approaching a new moon on the 15th. So in the evening sky, the moon isn't going to interfere at all for this week. And as you can see, between the 8th and the 15th, the biggest difference is how early the sun sets. It will continue to set earlier and earlier as we come to the end of December. Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars remain almost unchanged over the course of the entire week. Those are our evening time objects. We'll quickly take a look at the morning time objects because Mercury is becoming very clear at this particular week. Mercury reaches its greatest elongation, which means it's the furthest possible distance from the sun in our sky, on the 10th. A few days before and a few days after greatest elongation, Mercury will still look fantastic. So here comes the moon. As I said, on the 8th, we've reached last quarter, so it's not going to be coming up until just about midnight. Soon after the moon, we'll start to see the planet Venus as we get into the early hours of the morning. Any minute now, Venus should be popping up over in the east. There we go. So there's Venus coming through at just about after 5 o'clock, and there's Mercury reasonably close to it in the sky. So here's our morning sky on the 9th. Here's the morning sky on the 8th, not too different. And as we move through to the 15th, you'll see that the moon disappears. It gets just in front of the sun as we come to the 15th, 16th. Mercury stays visible. Mercury will be getting more difficult to see as we go past the 15th, as it leaves its greatest elongation. But it is going to be visible in the early morning sky for the entire week. It's one of the few times a year that Mercury is nice and easy to see for us here in Ireland, thanks to how high the ecliptic is at night time during the winter. So Mercury should be nice and clear over the next couple of mornings all the way through to the 15th, and even a few days after it, Mercury will still be reasonably visible. So those are our planets. We do have all 5 at this time of the year. We don't always have all 5 visible planets in the sky together, so it's a nice chance to get outside, see all of the planets in just one evening, and then you've seen all 5 of them. You can relax and only go out when you want to see them again. We will be taking a look at a deep sky object, and there's a particularly nice deep sky object. It's visible with the naked eye, but it looks even better through a telescope or binoculars, which is going to be up in the evening, and you can find it with a little bit of help from these planets. So we have Saturn and Jupiter over there towards the southwest. We've got Mars a little bit higher over towards the east. If we imagine an imaginary line joining the sunset over here in the southwest up to Jupiter and Saturn, over to Mars, and curving back down on the other side, that imaginary curve will bring us past this little group of stars. Now we're looking at them here as they would appear in the city. So I'm seeing maybe 4 or 5 of those little dots in the sky. These stars are known as the Seven Sisters, and they're called the Seven Sisters because in a dark sky it does appear to be 7. So if we bring ourselves out into the countryside, there we go, it's a much clearer knot of stars. This is what we call an open cluster. It's a group of stars that are close together, but we do still see them as individual stars. They don't all blend together into one big ball. Now, even with your eyes in the darkest part of the countryside, 7, maybe 8 is just about the most that you'll see. But even in a city like Cork, once we start taking a closer look, we'll see more and more. So back into the city, and we'll start zooming in. So already, even with a little bit of a magnification, very similar to what you'd get with a good pair of binoculars, we're already seeing a little bit of fuzziness around these stars, and more of the stars are starting to resolve. Taking a very close look, of course we can see all of their names here as well. We can see that there's many stars in this group. There's really over 100 stars in this group that we call the Seven Sisters or the Pleiades. You can see this star here is called Pleione. In the old Greek stories, Pleione and Atlas had daughters, and these are the daughters. Altogether we call them the Seven Sisters or the Daughters of Pleione. That's where Pleiades comes from. The lovely smoky glow that we can see here, most of that is actually between us and the Pleiades. They're very young stars, giving them this lovely bright blue colour. They're still very, very hot. That light comes through the cloud of gas between us and them and gets diffused, it gets spread out, so we see it as this fuzzy, smoky glow. In another few tens of thousands of years, the Pleiades will move one way, the smoky glow of gas will move the other way, and these stars will look a little bit sharper. We won't see as much of this fuzziness, which is also known as nebulosity, and it's connected to the word we have for nebulae. So the Seven Sisters are a great little collection of stars that you can take a closer look at this time of the year, morning or evening. They're up reasonably early in the evening. We're here at just about 6:30, and they stay with us all the way through to morning time. Although, of course, they do end up on the other side of the sky. And you can see as we approach morning time now, Mars is disappearing. Mars was both an evening and a morning time object in the end of October, while Mars was at opposition. Now that Mars has moved past opposition, it's almost like the full moon moving away from full. When the moon is full, it's with us all night long. When it moves away from full, it starts to disappear during the night. And that's exactly what's happening with Mars, moving a little bit past its opposition. There's the Seven Sisters, still nice and visible as we come up to 6:30 in the morning. They will get lower in the sky the earlier we get, and once the sky starts to get bright, the Seven Sisters will become fainter and fainter. There is another deep sky object which is becoming visible at this time of the year, but you will have to wait a little bit later before it's up and visible. Just below the Seven Sisters here at about 11 o'clock is the constellation of Orion, one of the most famous constellations in the sky. We can move a little bit earlier and still have Orion above the horizon. Here we are at just 10, but looking through the Earth's atmosphere at the horizon, you're looking through a little bit more air just because of the angle. So that can make the stars look a little bit fainter or extincted, which is a great word. We're going to take a closer look at Orion, and of course right there in the middle is Orion's belt, three of the most famous stars in the sky, and they're becoming nice and visible as early as 10 o'clock. Just underneath Orion's belt is Orion's sword, and already, just using a binoculars, we're starting to see a little bit of nebulosity, a little bit of that fuzziness. If we take a closer look, we'll see that there's a good bit more darkness here. We still see some light, fluffy, bluish type reflecting nebulae, but there's a lot of darkness here as well, and those dark clouds, well, they're absorption nebulae. Nebulae are clouds of gas. If they're reflecting light, they're reflection nebulae. If they're absorbing light, they're absorption nebulae. We also have another group which emit light once they get hot enough. This kind of pinkish colour here is a sign that those clouds are getting hotter, but these clouds aren't very bright red. They're not very clearly emission nebulae. The dark clouds here are an area where stars form. These clouds are full of hydrogen, and as hydrogen coalesces together and reaches a very large mass, the force, the pressure of all of that hydrogen coming together can start to initiate nuclear fusion, which is what gives birth to stars. So this dark cloud is known as a stellar nursery, a place where stars are born, and once the stars form and their light and heat starts to blow away the cloud of gas around them, you're left with an open cluster like the Seven Sisters. So over the next couple of evenings, you can take a look at two different stages in a star's life, from its birth in a stellar nebulae to its emergence into an open cluster with its sisters. So I hope you get a chance to see some of those objects over the coming days. The planets, of course, are nice and visible with the naked eye, but if you've got a telescope or binoculars, those other nebulae are well worth a look. So I hope you get a chance to see them, and I hope you get a chance to enjoy Science Week.